Hey everybody, and welcome back to another crazy video that I have conjured up. A very good friend of mine gave me this task of making a rolling pin. So I got a strange idea to do a segmented one. And what I'm doing is just laying pieces different ways. I'll lay a piece one way and then I'll put a bunch of other pieces the other way, as you can see what I'm doing here. I did realize I put way too much of this together. Like, I made a huge block for what I was making, and it was crazy. Like, you'll see when I put it on the lathe that it's enormous, and I wasn't sure how big or small I was going to make it, and it turned out, of course, it never turns out to how you expect it, but it still turned out good. So this is the first time doing a rolling pin, and even the most experienced wood turners will tell you that it's really hard to get one perfectly straight when you're carving it on the lathe. It is really hard. So I did have a difficult time getting it nice and straight, and the more I carved it straight, the more it would get smaller and smaller. So now I'm using Titebond 3 glue here and spreading it all around, making sure that it's coming in contact with most of the wood. And I'm kind of glad because I did get just enough glue to do this whole thing. My Titebond 3 is completely empty, so I know I have to get some more. Now there's the block. Now you can see how enormous it is. That's 4 days later that I let it sit clamped up. So now the easy part is just trying to get it round, but it does take a toll on your gouge because it's all end grain. Everything that I'm carving here is end grain, so it's a very slow process. This took a long while. I mean, I think I carved 3 days straight on it just to get it down to the size that I wanted. It's only on the lathe about 760 RPMs right now. It's at the slowest speed that the lathe will go. You can see it is coming round, and I worked my way the whole way down the whole area to get it rounded off. Once I got it rounded off, then it started becoming a little bit easier, and I was able to get the lathe speeded up a little bit, so I was able to get the lathe at about 1100, and I think the next level up is 1116 RPMs. I was able to do this between centers the whole time. I'd never had to put it in a chuck at all, or even put a plate onto it. It wasn't all that heavy, except for at the very first of it, until I got it rounded off and get it down some, then it wasn't so bad. It doesn't look like it, but those shavings coming off, they were quite warm on the hand. Now here, I'm just working my way down. I'm going back and forth, up and down, to try to get it completely round to what I need it. But of course, I've got a lot of work to do because this I ended up taking it down a long ways because I really glued together way too much. So call me crazy, but that's the way some of my things go. Now here I'm just marking out to where the roller itself is going to be. I measured out 10 inches across, and I'm using my parting tool just to make a groove so that I know where I could put my gouge and start carving down the pin to the right size. And I did this on both sides. Now I'm really starting to take it down quite a bit. I worked my way the whole way up and down it until I got it to the size that I needed. But then it still wasn't that easy. I think the hardest part of this whole thing was trying to get it straight. This took a long while. I did a lot of sharpening on my gouge. Probably every 5 minutes of carving, I ended up having to sharpen the gouge up a little bit. Just a touch up here and there to keep an edge onto it. Because the end grain that I'm cutting into was a little on the rough side. And it didn't exactly peel away as easy as it looks. I made sure I left myself about 2 or 3 inches on each side so I can work with it and keep a little bit of wood on there so it's not going to be too flimsy. Now here I'm getting it down to the size that I'm looking for. Now mind you, this is before I even started carving the handles, but see here I'm trying to get it straight. I'm trying to get it straightened out so that it's going to be nice and even across, and that's not so easy because the more you try to do it, the more that it started to curve. So you had to scrape some more, and then you had to dig some more, and before you know it, it was coming down a little bit smaller than what I actually wanted. See, I'm using something flat just to see if it's straight enough. And once I got it so that I was happy with how straight it was, then that's when I started on the handles on each side. Now this looks like it's carving fairly easy, but with the video speeded up 4 times faster, it's not really carving that easy. But I'm trying not to put too much pressure either, because of segmented piece, you don't want to put your gouge in too hard, or it could grab a catch and fly everything all apart. And then you're back to square one again. I'm over here working on the other side of the handle. And there's the other handle. Now I do take this down a little bit more. There is a part here that I took it down like I somewhat satisfied with it, but off camera I decided to peel it down a little bit smaller. Because I realized it was still a bit too big. Now here I'm just shear scraping the tool marks off of it. Trying to get it cleaned up. I'm just doing some light scraping with it. The grain into it is really nice. Now see, I did take the handles down a bit more, as you can notice here. But now I'm working on the sanding. I started with a 40 grit sandpaper because it was quite rough. I wanted this to be really nice and smooth, so I started with a 40 grit and then went to an 80 grit and then up to 100 and so on. And I went right to a 600 grit. Now right there, I believe I'm using the 600 grit onto it. You can see it's turning out a little bit more on the smooth side. Okay, so now I'm going to clean it up. I'm just taking the compressor and a clean rag and just wiping down the dust, making sure there's no dust onto it, cleaning it all up. And this is the purpose. Beeswax salad bowl finish. You can put this on salad bowls, the rolling pins, and cutting boards. You can get it into a local hardware store. At least that's where I got mine. Now I put on more than one little coat of this. I'm putting it on here now and I'm rubbing it in good. But then afterwards I usually put on a thick coat of it and I'll leave it for a few hours and then I'll come back and smoothen it out and buff it off. Wipe off any of the excess. Now, as you can see out of that big block, how small the rolling pin is right now. I'm not happy with the size of it, but it is you can use it, and it's functional. Okay, so now here I'm just putting on a thicker coat of it. I'm getting it on there because I'm going to leave it for a few hours, just dabbing it on there. Now here's where I'm really putting it on heavy. I'm just touching my finger on there with that good gob of it on there, and I'm putting it on nice and heavy. And that's where I will leave it for 3 to 4 hours. And then I'll come back and I'll use a clean rag to wipe off the excess, buff it up real nice. There it is. I'm going to shine it all up. Now getting this off, it was quite easy. I just used a coping saw and just grazed both ends of it, and it came right off. And then I just used a belt sander to round the ends of the both handles. All right, I'll leave the rest to you guys. Have fun, take care, and we'll see you the next time.